Hello, this is Pretty Guardian, and today I'm going to be delivering my definitive video on the 2021 action MMORPG New World. When this game was originally conceived, it had a lot of qualities that one would find in survival games, such as open world constant PvP, a focus on crafting and surviving harsh enemies and environments. In the year leading up to its release, the development team made a sharp pivot towards bringing in more PvE-oriented content like the expeditions, quest lines, and more trade skills like fishing. At this point, I was skeptical of the game. I didn't think it would be possible for them to bring forth a full game's worth of PvE content in such a short period of time to the quality that one would expect from a AAA developer. It seemed like a cash grab, a way to lure in people by overpromising and underdelivering. When the game did finally launch and I was able to dive deep into the content, I thought they had proven me wrong. I was having an amazing time exploring the absolutely beautiful island of Eternum. The crafting system was robust and complex, gathering was fun, I was enjoying the questing system and the variety of quests, like they had faction quests, town quests, side quests. They even had housing. There was so many systems in place that held so much promise that even in the face of glaring bugs, I was able to see a world of possibility in New World. Before we dive deeper into our conversation about New World, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for being here in this moment with me and watching my videos. If you want to see more of my gaming content, please consider subscribing. That way you'll be the first to know and it'll help my channel grow. Let's just talk about some of those bugs in New World for a moment. There were issues with the trading system, issues with people being able to code in the game's chat box, issues with the game bricking people's GPUs. It got to a point where I had to make a conscious effort to stop talking about the game on my channel because I couldn't in good faith continue telling people about a game that was this bad, even if I had been enjoying it myself. I want to take a little bit more time here to talk about the great things that I loved about this game. I did put in over 400 hours, so obviously it has to have some merit to it. And I think one of the things that initially attracted me to the game was the unique setting. It takes place on an island called Eternum. The game is set in roughly the 16th century and has many artistic elements borrowed from different cultures around the world, giving me strong Greedfall, Spanish conquistador vibes. The aesthetic felt very unique in the gaming climate when it came out. The game has great sound design. Hearing trees splinter as I chop them down is way more satisfying than it has any right to be. Even just while filming the footage for this video, there was a point where I was in Ebonscale in the marsh and you could hear like all the birds and the bugs and things, and it felt immersive. I can't think of any other game that really hit it out of the park like this. I've also enjoyed the combat system. It feels weightier than something like Elder Scrolls Online, but it also requires a level of engagement that makes it a lot more challenging than something like World of Warcraft or EverQuest 2. You get 2 weapons that you can swap between, and there's a decent variety of weapons to choose from. Swords and staves to bows, and the newly released blunderbuss. Then each weapon has multiple skill trees that you can choose from. It gives you enough freedom in gearing your character and crafting a build that you feel like your choices matter. But it's restricted enough that there isn't a lot of skill bloat and you won't get lost in the weeds of theory crafting. I really enjoy this swapping weapons. It's very reminiscent of Elder Scrolls Online, particularly with the limited skill bar that you have as well. But a lot of times the weapon swapping is not very responsive.
I can't switch to my Void Gauntlet and press Void Blade because it lags so much. That's the problem. Like, the weapon swapping and ability queuing is just, like, bad.
I have mixed feelings on it because I feel like the system still has a lot of potential, but there are some people who might describe it as clunky or feeling like the game is maybe a little bit dated even though it's a very new game, and I can understand where that feeling comes from because it does play a lot more like something from 2013, 2014, that sort of time frame. Expeditions are one of the most important components of the PvE offerings in New World. There are basically the group dungeons that are designed for 3 to 5 players to take on a variety of different bosses and mechanics. The general dungeon design is interesting and offers a variety of challenges. For example, in Starstone Barrows, they have a maze of lasers that you have to navigate through, and all the dungeons have pretty interesting bosses, except for maybe the first one where it was a little bit easier, but that also makes sense because they were kind of easing people into the content at that stage. One of the biggest disappointments to me is the number of bosses that have some glitch that you can exploit to beat. It's so bad that the meta of the game is to exploit those glitches. It makes the mechanics of the fight or the skills you've honed just seem trivial. Around December, they launched a winter convergence event for the winter holiday season. There was a cute bit of lore about 2 Yetis competing, one who wants to cover the realm in eternal winter, and another who stands against him. We were able to complete quests for the good Yeti, who rewarded us with gifts. There were gorgeous decorations around the cities, and an addition of an emergent event in the form of meteor showers. These meteor showers were absolutely stunning and an interesting addition to the game because it made exploring feel more random and rewarding. Meteor shards would cascade to the ground, and you would go and collect them for crafting materials and loot. I thought the event brought exactly the kind of magic to Eternum that I was living for. A lot of people may not have been paying attention to it, but I also thought the story of New World was interesting too. There was a lot of in-depth lore that was revealed to us through the questing and journal pages that dot the map. So we had a well-developed setting, and then the personal story of our character where they go on a quest to become a warden, a champion dedicated to fighting the corruption in Eternum. Through bits of notes, we also start to piece together the story of a conqueror named Isabella, who came to Eternum seeking power. They spend a lot of time using fluffy language to describe the events that lead to her arrival on Eternum, but they don't give as much personal information that could show us who Isabel is or what her character motivations are. There's almost a disconnect between her, our character's storyline, and the Isle of Eternum that makes facing her feel like it doesn't really matter. Eventually, I reached the end of the main quest chain and realized the story just ended. There was no boss fight, no culmination of the story. It simply stopped. It was jarring in both its conclusion and in how radiantly it dawned on me that they had knowingly shipped an incomplete game. This game was a wound of deceitful practices and promises left to fester. At the end of March, the game released its big Heart of Madness update. In this update, roughly 6 months after the game's initial launch, they're finally bringing us the main story finale quest. Maybe I should be happy that they decided to give us some kind of finale, but I honestly feel so cheated that they gave us such a half-assed version of what the 1.0 release should have been. It also introduces a new gun type weapon called the Blunderbuss. The final expedition, I do want to mention, is a great dungeon. It's beautiful, otherworldly, dangerous. I commend the work that they did put in, even if it was untimely. However, it is with genuine downheartedness that I made this video to tell you that I still can't recommend New World. There were still so many bugs that made the game literally unplayable for me. The big one was when it brought me to a loading screen with a blue continue button on it as I was booting up the game, but I couldn't click through that screen to continue the game. So I had to open up Task Manager to close the program and try to reload it with my fingers crossed that it'll load correctly this time. There are others too, like areas of the in-game map that you can just fall through and then you're stuck in the terrain. This game is a messy cash grab, and I would just urge anyone to exercise a bit of caution when looking at buying this game. On Steam, one of the reviewers who's played the game for over 500 hours and has a lot of experience in MMOs dating back to the good old Ultima Online days kind of documents his experience for the game, which starts with, New World is a great game, but he doesn't feel like the devs are really listening to the player base. And there's a lot of systems in the game that just don't feel fulfilling in the way that they should, whether that's faction imbalances or healers being consistently nerfed. He does mention briefly some of the bugs. For example, he had one where you lose 5 attribute points every time you respec, which to me, that would be a game-breaking thing right there. Like, you do not mess with your character's progression. And he closes it out by saying that this game needs about a year to mature and even out. Save your money until then. I'm inclined to agree with him. Looking at the state of the game at launch to the state of the game 6 months later today, the game in its current form is what I would have expected them to deliver on launch. Something that has, at the very least, a complete storyline present in it. And then even just looking at the bugs, I think that when you're developing something as big as an MMORPG, having some bugs and things like that is totally normal. And we can kind of expect the devs to iron some of those kinks out in the future. But the state that it was at launch, it was a disaster. And now 6 months later, it's only maybe slightly less of a disaster, ? So it'll be interesting to see where the game is at in a year. I don't personally plan on making more content about it unless they really turn things around. So I guess we will just have to see. The question I found myself asking myself is, do I regret buying this game? Like, if I had a magical time machine to jump in, rewind time, would I still have bought it? And I don't think that I regret buying the game. I did ultimately have a lot of fun in my 400 hours in Eternum. I just don't think that the glaring problems in the way the game studio has conducted themselves and the state of the current game can be overlooked anymore. New World is a swirling moat of possibility left unfulfilled.